Hello everybody, Aaron the Nintendrovert here and welcome back to the channel. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the microphone sounds a little bit better this time. Last time I tried recording with this mic, the audio was just very grainy sounding. I don't know, like an old CB radio or something, but hopefully we've got that lined out now. I've tried for one thing, I turned the volume down a little bit, and I'm also trying to talk further away from the microphone because before I think I was leaning in close because I was worried it wouldn't pick it up, but I think it was probably too loud. So I probably just need to sit back and not get up super close to it. I'm still learning, so apologies for that. But yeah, in this video, I thought we would just talk about what I thought of the Sonic 3 movie. I finally had a chance to see it a few days ago on New Year's Day, actually, for the first time. And yeah, I enjoyed the movie, so I thought we could just sit here and just talk about what worked, what didn't. Where I would rank it compared to the other Sonic movies, and where I kind of, foresee them going in the future with Sonic 4. So with that said, let's get right into it. And yeah, it definitely. And by the way, this is going to have spoilers, so spoiler warning. In fact, we're going to jump straight into spoilers here. So this movie has a more serious tone than the other two Sonic movies, and that's pretty apparent from like the first trailer that they put out. But yeah, you actually have characters that like die in this movie. Nobody dies in Sonic 1 or Sonic 2. So you've still got humor. There's still some funny elements in there, but they killed off the Olive Garden guy. Like, what the heck? I didn't see that one coming. The Olive Garden guy, he's kind of a running gag character in the first movie. In the second movie, he kind of has a more important role as like an agent, working for the gun organization. But yeah, they kill him off in this one. It's just so funny. Just imagine going back in time to like 2019 before the first Sonic movie came out, back when they had that ugly Sonic design and everybody thought it looked terrible, and telling Sonic fans like, yeah, this is going to get multiple sequels. This is going to become a franchise. In the third one, they're going to kill off a character who is referred to as the Olive Garden guy. I mean, like, who could have predicted that one? But yeah, they kill him off. They of course go into Shadow's dark backstory and like Maria and everything. So you see her die, but it's not super gruesome. I wasn't sure how they were going to handle that. I've never actually played Shadow the Hedgehog. I think in that game Maria actually gets like shot, right? Because I know like at the start you have like you hear the gunshot go off, and then Maria. But in this one, it seemed to be framed more as like an accident. Someone correct me on that. I'm not like the hardest of core Sonic fans. I'm kind of a more casual fan. But so I've never really even played a lot of the games that Shadow's prominent in. Like I've never played Sonic Adventure 2. I've never played Shadow the Hedgehog. I did play the Shadow Generations expansion, or whatever you want to call it, the second campaign that was added to Sonic and Shadow Generations. And I really enjoyed that, so that's kind of my best, prior knowledge for Shadow's whole motivations. But yeah, so Maria doesn't actually get shot like I always thought she did, and maybe I'm wrong about that. But it seemed to be framed more as an accident. Like there are people at gun who's shooting at her, and then the one guy's like, no, don't, that's a child. But then he shoots I guess like a canister of I don't know what they got in there, if it's like Shadow's essence that they've harnessed. Whatever he shoots, it blows up the whole place, and then Maria dies. So it's kind of framed as more of an accident, whereas I feel like it's a little bit more concrete that like, no, this was purposeful in the game. But I don't know. I could be wrong about that. So let me know. Again, I'm coming at this with my novice level Sonic expertise. But as a casual, I did really enjoy the movie, though. I think for the most part, they did do a pretty good job explaining everything, making you care about Shadow and his relationship with Maria. To be honest, I was a little bit lost on some of the gun stuff. I know they introduced that in the second movie, but yeah, having never played like the adventure games or anything, or Shadow the Hedgehog, I don't fully understand guns' role, and I'm still a little bit confused about it. Like, are they bad guys? Are they good guys? Is it kind of ambiguous? Are they good guys who did a bad thing? Are they, I feel like the movie could have done a little bit of a better job helping me understand exactly who Gun is, what their motivations are, because obviously they wanted to harness Shadow's powers, and then, so that was kind of a whole thing, and then they build, Gerald Robotnik's, super weapon and everything to his specifications. So I'm still a little bit unclear about Gunn's role and what their end goal is, what they're trying to accomplish. Maybe they did a better job explaining it in the movie than I'm giving it credit for, and I'm just, we kind of made it a family outing when we went to see the movie, so it was me and my little nephew, my little 6-year-old nephew Cooper, and then my mom and dad. So it was a little bit hard to focus because, I remember like my mom, she lost her, what do you call it? Like one of those like teeth straightening things you put in that's like clear. I'm blanking on what it's called now. And then like they had to like switch seats because like two of them were like sharing a drink, and then it was like so I had to move where I was sitting so they could have access to the cup holder. And then you got your 6-year-old nephew who's talking through the movie and stuff, and you're trying to tell him to be quiet because we're in a theater. So if I was watching the movie by myself, I'd probably have a better time being able to just focus and concentrate on what's happening and maybe not miss out on some of those plot points. So maybe it's just me. Maybe they did go into more detail about Gunn and kind of did a better job explaining that. But yeah, as it is, that's something I'm still kind of confused on, having not played those other Sonic games. But other than that, that's kind of the main thing where it's like it just felt like there was kind of some plot holes there, or at least some gaps in my knowledge where I'm like, I don't really understand fully what the deal is with Gunn as an organization, because it's like, well, they can't be all bad, right? Because like her Maddie's sister like joins Gunn, like she becomes a part of it, right? And then her husband, the agent guy from the second movie, he's in there. So like I guess Gunn is good. Like I don't fully get it. But I did enjoy the movie. That was the one thing I was confused about. I thought the action scenes were really good because again, this movie, like it's still got a lot of funny elements in there. It feels like the comedy in some elements kind of takes a back seat, kind of for the sake of more serious plot developments, and it's not as hokey or like cringe or like corny as like I feel like, say, in like the Shadow the Hedgehog game. I just always felt like, I never played it, so maybe I'm wrong, but it just seemed very like too over the top, edgy, like trying to be cool, whatever. But I didn't really get that vibe from this movie. Like the dramatic moments work pretty well for the most part, I would say. You have one instance where Shadow, unintentionally, because like they're disguised, and so Tom disguises as like the gun leader person who died. That was a thing I didn't understand too, because like they impersonated that guy, and it's like, he helped him out, he gave him that key card and everything. So it seems like the guy at the top of Gun who got killed was nice, but then everyone else seems to be of a different mindset, or maybe it's just that girl who took over after him. I'm still kind of lost on what that was all about, to be completely honest. But yeah, I think they had some stuff in there like where Tom, he almost dies in this movie, so that was very dramatic. Because he's disguised as the leader of the gun organization, and Shadow sees him and thinks that is the leader, and so Shadow, because he wants justice for Maria, where she was unfairly killed by them, so he hauls off and punches him, and then the disguise goes off. He realizes his mistake, that was Tom, but what are you gonna do? He's not too remorseful about it because he's planning to help Gerald in the world anyways. Yeah, essentially, like that's another very dark element. They're essentially, Gerald's motivations is to basically commit the largest case of murder-suicide known to man, because he's just, I guess, done with life, and he wants everybody to pay, and experience the suffering he suffered. So he just wants to wipe out all human life, just destroy the entire planet. He doesn't want to take it over like Eggman wanted to his grandson. He just wants to just destroy everything. And Shadow is, right alongside him on that. So that's already, like, super heavy. But yeah, so Tom almost dies, and then Sonic, he's filled with anger and, like, wants to get his vengeance. So it's kind of, makes parallels to Maria and Shadow. And so Sonic and Shadow are kind of two sides of the same coin. They kind of talk about that in the first trailer of the movie, where they're like, Shadow's story is a lot like yours, Sonic, but where you found, friends and family, Shadow felt, or found nothing but, pain and loss, and so it's kind of just Sonic having to not give in to the dark side and give over to his desire for revenge and to make Shadow pay the way that Shadow's trying to make everybody else pay for what happened to Maria. And they have a pretty heavy scene where Sonic and Knuckles kind of have a standoff moment where Sonic's like, "You're going to tell me where the Master Emerald is, so I can go Super Sonic because I'm Sonic basically he's out for blood. He wants to kill that guy, And Knuckles is like, "No, this isn't the right thing. We promised ourselves we're not gonna, use the Chaos Emerald. I'm supposed to guard it, and we're not letting it fall into the wrong hands." And Sonic's just like, "I don't care about all that. This is my friend. He almost killed Tom, who's kind of my caretaker, and he gave me a home and took me in, and I'm not gonna let him get away with this." And yeah, so I thought maybe they were gonna like fight, like there was gonna be a fight scene, which would have been okay, I guess. But I was also fearful, like, well, is this gonna be a thing where like Sonic goes behind their backs and gets the Chaos Emerald, and then they had like in the third act, like kind of common movie tropes of like oh, they have a falling out for a little bit, and then they have to Sonic has to rebuild their trust and get their friendship again. But no. The conflict's resolved pretty quickly, and I thought it was done probably the best way they could have handled it, where it's not a fight, it's not through Sonic going behind Knuckles' back. Knuckles concedes, and he's like, "All right, Sonic, I trust you. I'll tell you where the Master Emerald is. Just, please do the right thing and be responsible with it, but, you're my friend, and I trust you, so I'm going to tell you where it's at." And kind of one of the moments of levity, it's Wade Whipple, who's like the most unserious character in the Sonic movies. Knuckles lent it to him, which kind of fits because if you watch the Knuckles series that was on Paramount, that's all kind of about Knuckles and Wade, and so they kind of develop a pretty strong friendship. I didn't really like the Knuckles series, to be honest, and I think Wade as a character I don't really like him, to be completely honest. So I'm kind of glad that was like the only scene that Wade is even in was Sonic just taking the emerald from him, and like Wade, he's just not at all being responsible with the emerald. He's just like playing hockey with it on the roof, and he's like, "I'm sorry, Sonic." It's kind of predictable, where it's going. He's like, "I'm sorry, Sonic, but I can't let you take this. Knuckles told me to guard this emerald with my life." And then Sonic snatches it up before he can even finish his sentence, and it's like, "Well, I did all I can do." So, but I'm glad they didn't give Wade too prominent of a role in this movie because I'm not a big fan of Wade. Speaking of characters who didn't get a super prominent role, they had the Eggman's assistant, Agent Stone, and I feel like they did a much better job incorporating him into this movie than the second movie. In the second movie, it felt like Agent Stone was mostly just kind of meandering along, like they didn't really know what to do with him. I kind of got the impression that Agent Stone was meant to be a one-off character for the first movie, but they didn't expect him to become as popular as he did. He was kind of became a fan favorite character. And so then I felt like the writers were kind of like, okay, well, people want to see him come back, so let's try to figure out a way we can shoehorn him into the second movie. And I just feel like it didn't work. Like they have a weird scene with him and Wayne, and like Wayne has him tied up and is like interrogating him, and it's meant to be like a humorous thing, but it just didn't land. Again, like Wade kind of sucks as a character, in my opinion. I'm sorry to all the Wade stands out there. But in this one, like Agent Stone, he doesn't have like a ton of dialogue. He is kind of pretty important at the beginning of the movie in that he helps. He kind of shows Sonic and Co. where to find Dr. Eggman. Kind of against Dr. Eggman's wishes, and tries to basically force them to work together to stop this new threat. So he's very important at the start of the movie, and then kind of for most of the middle of the movie, he's kind of relegated to being in the background more or less. But in some ways, he's kind of the unsung hero of this movie. He's kind of the equivalent of like Neville from Harry Potter, where it's like Harry's the chosen one. He's the one who ends up killing Voldemort. But if not for Neville, who, is kind of the last person you'd expect, like, they really wouldn't have stood a chance. Because he, defeats the last Horcrux or whatever and kills the, was it Voldemort's like snake or whatever, and then that leaves him open for Harry to be able to deal the final blow. So yeah, Agent Stone is kind of the Neville in this movie because he, if not for him, he's kind of the one that has Eggman kind of have the realization that like, no, there's this planet's worth fighting for, that life is valuable, it's precious. And whereas, his grandfather, Gerald Robotnik, is just completely nihilistic and just devoid of caring about the world or anything. Like he's, I guess, just chronically depressed after what happened. Eggman's kind of like, no, there is someone who cares about me. It's Agent Stone. So I thought that was really cool how they handled that. It was kind of an emotional moment, when Eggman has that epiphany, and then he ends up, of course, sacrificing himself to save the day. He defeats Gerald, his grandfather. I've really not talked a whole lot about Gerald Robotnik, but yeah, obviously he's played by Jim Carrey. He plays two different characters in this movie. He plays the Eggman we're used to. Ivo Robotnik, I believe, is his name. And again, I'm not the hardest of core Sonic fans, but I believe Ivo, and then his grandfather Gerald. It kind of goes back to the lore of the first movie, where there's like a little line where he says something about, when he's talking to Tom, like, I was reciting formulas while you were spitting up formula, and he's like, Tom's like, I was breastfed actually, and he's like, nice, rub that in my orphan face, which is kind of a silly, somewhat throwaway line, but also like, it kind of gives you insight into Eggman's character. I don't know if it's that way in the games that he was like an orphan, or if that's just a thing they did for the movies. But yeah, so this movie has a lot to do with that, where Eggman, because his grandfather Gerald was, imprisoned for like the past 50 years. Eggman didn't even know anything about him, that he was alive or anything. So Eggman kind of grew up without a family, just kind of an orphan, who just kind of had to figure things out for himself. Growing up in a foster home, I guess, and he would get bullied in school. He talked about it in the first movie. So in some ways, Eggman, they kind of make him a sympathetic character, where you realize like he just really didn't, even as a child, have anybody in his corner. He had no family, no role models really that he could look up to. But here he finally has somebody in Gerald, his grandfather, who's basically just like him. So they have a lot of funny chemistry. Again, it's Jim Carrey acting with Jim Carrey, but he does a really good job of making them feel like two distinct characters. So they have a very kind of the same personality, but it's, you're able to suspend your disbelief and be like, yeah, no, this is actually Eggman's grandfather. It doesn't just feel like Jim Carrey having a conversation with Jim Carrey. It kind of makes me think of like how they talk about like how Mel Blanc, was able to do an impression of, Bugs Bunny doing a Daffy impression and Daffy doing a Bugs Bunny impression, and those not sounding the same, like those being two different voices, and how hard that is for all these other voice actors who have tried to do that on like The Simpsons or SpongeBob or whatever. They do exercises trying to do that, and they can't do it. So Jim Carrey, in some ways, he's kind of, I guess, a modern day Mel Blanc. He's a modern day a lot of things, but that's, I think, a good comparison to make. Except with Jim Carrey, it's probably even harder because he's actually a stage actor, whereas Mel Blanc was just voices, so that adds kind of an extra layer because you're also having to use body language and all that stuff. But I think he does a really good job with it. There's a lot of humorous moments with them where you kind of see that in the trailer in a little bit. Watching the trailer for the movie, I was like, how are they going to incorporate this? Where you have that scene where it's like Gerald Robotnik, he's dressed up like Santa, and he's like, shh, and like Eggman sees him there. He's like, he's a little kid on Christmas, and he's like, ah, and he like tackles him into the Christmas tree. It's like, what the crap is even happening? But yeah, it turns out like where Eggman got to reconnect with his grandfather, they spend like a whole day in this like VR simulation, just like making up for the past 50 years and just doing all this stuff. They're like eating cotton candy in the park, and they're like, just all this, riding on roller coaster rides, and then Agent Stone is there as kind of a third wheel in the background. So that was pretty funny. They've got moments where they're doing kind of a you've got the two Eggmen trying to infiltrate the gun headquarters at the same time that, like, Sonic is trying to break in. And so they're, you see the two Eggmen, they're like dancing their way, they're like doing the tango through, these laser fields and stuff. So there was a lot of good humor there, but in the end you find out that really, Gerald really does not care at all about his grandson, Ivo. And there's one quote that's pretty heavy. He tells them, because, they're both his grandchildren, I guess, I don't guess Maria's like, is Eggman's sister right? Like I'm guessing it's maybe like because they have the same grandfather, but maybe it was two different you know kids of his that married and had so that maybe they're like cousins to each other. I don't know. Um, but you have a line where he tells him where Gerald tells him, "You're no Maria," and it's like wow. Like that's pretty heavy. That must have felt like such a punch in the gut to Eggman, and then that's where he kind of remembers Agent Stone because at one point he ends up firing Agent Stone because he like abuses him throughout all three of the movies, and it's played for comedic effect. But here you have him just genuinely being like, hey, you know, I've messed up here. He's actually the only person who's had my back this entire time, and that kind of motivates him to save the whole world. So I thought that was handled really well. Um, what else to say about the movie? So Eggman, he ends up sacrificing himself. He ends up blowing up the I don't know what they call it because again, why I didn't play that Sonic game, but the big death ray that Gunn made to Gerald's specifications. They end up they try to shut it down, but they can't. It happens really fast, but Eggman essentially like kills his grandfather, but it's in the most anticlimactic way possible, which is like really funny the way that they executed that. It just kind of just and then he's dead. But yeah, so that's another death in the movie. Gerald dies. At least I presume he's dead, and they're not going to bring him back in the fourth one or anything. But yeah, they refocus the laser off of Earth. They can't really shut it off. But then Shadow, because at this point he's become good, Sonic kind of helps rehabilitate him and make him realize that this isn't what Maria would have wanted, and so they both go supersonic together and try to stop the death laser. And Shadow, he pushes it away as far as he can, and Eggman, he broadcasts his final message to the world before he explodes, and it's genuinely pretty emotional. Like Jim Carrey, even though he's kind of known mostly as being a comedic actor, he's able to incorporate very serious moments too, and not just humor. I mean, if you look at movies like The Truman Show, and like he's done some more serious roles, even though most of what he does is for comedic effect. But he is good at being serious when he needs to, and so it kind of hits when he's almost crying as he's making this ultimate sacrifice to save the world. So I thought that was handled really well. And then in the post-credit scene, you see that Shadow was still alive because he was also kind of caught up in that explosion. And that's kind of like I feel like that probably got people really hyped knowing that Shadow isn't dead. But at the same time, I feel like it kind of takes away from the sacrifice. Like I feel like Eggman probably isn't dead either. But if they bring him back in the fourth movie, I feel like that's just going to undermine everything he did at the end of the third movie. Like it's when the fourth movie comes out, if Eggman's just back, like, hey, I survived, I'm completely fine. Then rewatching the third movie is suddenly going to be a lot less. It's not going to hit near as much because it's like, well, that ultimately Eggman didn't sacrifice anything. He thought he was, but and yeah, he did save the world, but he didn't actually, didn't actually die. So I don't know, but I don't think that he's dead. They probably are going to bring him off. It is kind of bring him back. I mean, it is kind of interesting how with every movie they do kind of give Jim Carrey an out, because I know Jim Carrey for a while was saying that he was going to stop acting, like he was going to retire after like the first Sonic movie, and then he came back and did the second one, and then he did the third one, and now he's saying he'd be open to be back for a fourth one, and he's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, I kind of like making sequels now. I used to didn't, but now it's growing on me. So I don't know what changed. If he had a Grinch moment and his heart grew 3 sizes that day or what. But Jim Carrey apparently isn't stepping out of the spotlight anytime soon. But it is kind of interesting how they always give him an out where it's like, okay, if we can't get Jim to come back for this fourth movie, well, he had that whole sacrifice, so it'll be okay. We can ride around it. It's no problem. But because he is such a fan favorite character and probably a big part of the reason that the movies have been so financially successful, I think they are going to try to get Jim back, and especially since he seems interested in it. But I think the best thing they can do, this is what I hope, is that for the fourth movie, because of this, I could see the fourth movie not doing as well at the box office, but I think they need to not market the movie with Jim Carrey. Again, I don't know if the company's going to want to do this because that's going to mean they're going to take a financial hit. But just from a story perspective, I would like to see them not market Jim Carrey as being in the movie, throughout the whole movie, Jim Carrey doesn't show up, so you really have to sit with that and feel the gravity of his sacrifice, of like what that means. Because like Jim, like Eggman just is not here. We've got some other big bad that we're working on. Maybe Agent Stone is there, kind of helping us out, taking care of Metal Sonic or whatever. I don't know. But then maybe in the post credits scene, then they show like Doctor, you're alive, and it's Eggman, and he's going to be in the fifth movie. Do kind of like a Captain Barbosa thing from the end of the second Pirates of the Caribbean movie, where you find out that he got brought back to life or whatever. So I don't really know. Again, I'm not super deep into the Sonic lore. Obviously, Sonic uses the power of the Chaos Emeralds to turn into Super Sonic. Can you use those to like bring somebody back from the dead? Like, can they do different things, kind of like the Dragon Balls? Like, can you grant a wish with them? I don't know. The movie did feel kind of like Dragon Ball Z at some points, where you've got Sonic and Shadow zipping around across the cosmos, going Super Saiyan, and Sonic punches Shadow, and he punches him all the way from Egypt to Paris or something, and then Shadow punches Sonic from London, England, all the way to China or something. That was a pretty cool sequence. So there was a lot of good action in this movie. Special effects wise, I think the second movie might have had the best visual effects, like when he creates the giant Eggman robot or whatever. I don't know what it's called, but it's like the final boss from Sonic 2. And you see like he's got the Master Emerald, and just the way it like derails a train and is like ripping off pieces of metal and then combines them into like the effects looked amazing in the second movie. I was like, wow, this is really high budget stuff. The third movie, I wouldn't say I was as impressed with the special effects, but it still looked really good. But yeah, so I hope for the fourth movie that Eggman has kind of a backseat role, even though I love Jim Carrey. Again, for the sacrifice to hit, if they also want to continue to have Jim Carrey in future movies, I think we need to have a movie kind of without him until the end credits to get everybody all excited. That way you really have to sit with the fact that like he sacrificed himself. He's not here. Whether he died and somehow they can bring him back with the emeralds, or maybe he just, I don't know, maybe he got mortally wounded and he had to like build himself a new robotic hand. I could see that being kind of cool, because he already does the like a bzz, bzz thing, like pretending like he's a robot. I feel like he would actually be happy about that. He's like, I lost all the functions in my the left half of my body, so I had to rebuild myself an animatronic appendages or whatever, talking fancy, like using big words like Eggman does. I could see that being kind of fun, and then he's actually like zzz, zzz, zzz. It's like now he's not just pretending, he actually is part robot. So I think that could be kind of funny. Let me plug my laptop up here before it dies. I need to start remembering to do that before I start recording. But yeah, I thought the movie overall was pretty solid. So I think for the fourth movie, like I said, I want Jim Carrey to kind of take a back seat. I think where do they go from here? It's something I've been thinking about a lot, because it felt like this was a really good conclusion to a trilogy, but they've already announced they're going to be making a fourth movie. You got the first of the two post-credit sequences, that show Metal Sonic, because that was a highly requested character, and it looks like there's a lot of them. Like, I guess they mass-produced a bunch of Metal Sonics, so I don't know what that's about, because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but Dr. Eggman is the one who made Metal Sonic, right? Again, I'm not the best when it comes to Sonic lore. I've always been kind of more of a Mario guy, but Sonic is growing on me in recent years. So like, did he make the Metal Sonics, and then they kind of just, I don't know, he never got to fully realize his plan with them, or they went haywire and stopped listening to him, or what, and now Sonic's having to deal with those now that Eggman's gone, and maybe has to team up with Agent Stone, who has all the schematics on, where Eggman built the Metal Sonics to kind of help Sonic figure out a way to stop them, because it's not what Eggman would want anymore. Or did somebody else build them? I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. Did Gerald do it? I don't know. But, so I think for the fourth movie, because we know it's going to have Metal Sonic and also Amy, she's going to be a prevalent character. They're bringing in more and more, Sonic universe characters. I think it's time we leave Earth. I hope the fourth movie will be set on Sonic's home planet because in the movies he is an alien, comes from another planet. We see at the very start of the movie where he's baby Sonic and he's going through loop de loops and it looks like Green Hill Zone and everything, and then he ends up on Earth in a town which is called Green Hills, but it's not the same. It doesn't have all the crazy loop de loops and the environment we're familiar with. So yeah, I would like for the fourth movie maybe some way, and like they can still have Tom and Maddie in there. I think maybe what they could do is like whoever the main villain is of this fourth movie, maybe he kidnaps Sonic's human friends and puts them in prison somewhere on another planet, like on Sonic's home planet. So Sonic has to toss a ring and go back to his home planet where he came from and take Tails and Knuckles and Amy and I guess Shadow if he's going to be there, or I don't know what role Shadow's going to have in this. And they all go to Sonic's home planet. So because it feels like after the first movie, like with the second and third movies, it's kind of like they've not really known what to do with Tom and Maddie and co, and they've kind of been taking more and more of a back seat, like Wade. So yeah, I think it's just going to be Sonic's core team, and maybe the only human character that's with them throughout the adventure is Agent Stone, who again is letting Sonic have access to all of Eggman's schematics and his weapons and stuff, and trying to help him deactivate the metal Sonics or something. And also I have kind of some stuff in there where Agent Stone is kind of dealing with the grief of losing Eggman, who mattered to him more than anybody. So I think kind of having to become his own person, I guess, and learn to be comfortable not being in Eggman's shadow anymore. Some character growth. Now he's making goat milk lattes for himself. Lattes with steamed Austrian goat milk. So yeah, I could see him having a pretty big role in the next movie, because I feel like just to kind of, since they are live action movies, you do have to kind of have maybe one human character at least to kind of ground it, especially since if Dr. Eggman doesn't have a big role, and people already do like Agent Stone quite a bit. Yeah, I think they might want to lean into him a little bit more, but otherwise less of a focus on the human characters. Maybe occasionally cut to them, have a little scene here and there where they're trying to do like a jailbreak or something. But yeah, they're out of commission, they're in jail, and most of the movie is Sonic trying to get them out using all of his new furry animal friends, So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see more locales from the games, not just Green Hill Zone, but maybe they can bring in, like, there's like a, they have to infiltrate some kind of chemical plant and take it down, because, Chemical Plant Zone from Sonic 2 is another one of the most famous Sonic levels. So yeah, I'd just like to see them bring in more locales from the actual games and not just stuff on Earth, and not just, Tokyo and London and, wherever else, San Francisco, So that's my biggest hope for the new Sonic movie. I could see it being a thing if they do go to Sonic's home planet, of maybe like Sonic kind of finally gets closure on exactly what happened to Longclaw. Maybe she survived after all this time. I don't know. She keeps getting brought back up in each movie. So Sonic just kind of getting definitive, because he never actually saw her die. He just saw her get hurt. So like, well, maybe she survived, maybe she didn't. Maybe Knuckles isn't the last Echidna. Maybe there's a remnant of those that survived out there, some of his other, warrior race of people. Maybe we can get some more lore on exactly why the Echidnas and the Owls, or whoever the other group was, why they hated each other so much and, were opposed. Maybe Sonic learned some hard truths, that maybe Longclaw wasn't as good as she acted that she was. Who knows? But maybe she's the main villain of the fourth movie. That'd be something. Yeah, that's kind of what I want. I think we've had enough adventures on Earth. I don't think there's a whole lot more you can do on planet Earth. So send Sonic back to his home planet for the fourth movie is kind of what I'm hoping for. But yeah, what else do I want to say about the movie? It had a lot of good fan service. In Sonic 3, the humor was still pretty good, even though they kind of dialed it back a little bit, because where it was more serious, you didn't have all the like product placement. I appreciated that, because there were so many times where Sonic, especially in the first two movies, would make all these like cheesy like one-liner Seinfeld jokes, basically, like, can you believe Amazon is going to start sending packages with these things? What's up with that? So they kind of tone that back. There's a little bit of product placement. Sonic kind of plugs Google Maps, but again, they don't reference Olive Garden in this movie. That one was funny though. I would have been okay if they kept the Olive Garden gag running. On the fourth movie, if they go to Sonic's home planet and it's like all this like crazy otherworldly alien stuff, but it's like, hey, they even have an Olive Garden here. But other than that, I'm kind of glad that they kind of cut back on those for the most part. But the jokes are, you know, pretty funny for the most part. Again, Eggman, the two Eggmen, have a lot of good humor. But I also kind of liked how, they showed it in, like, I think the second trailer, but they've got that joke in there where this little Japanese girl goes up to Tails and she's like, "Are you Detective Pikachu?" And then Knuckles is like, "He does look like a Pokemon. Pika Pika." So that was pretty funny. It'd be interesting to see what Nintendo thought about that. Did they have to like sign off on that? I mean, I'm sure they'd be cool with it. I would imagine. Probably felt honored to have have that reference in there. But so that was pretty good. They kind of had this whole thing where Tom and Maddie, they're kind of like not sure what to do with themselves and trying to take up different hobbies now that Sonic's off doing Sonic stuff, Sonicing all over the place, and he's made like a ventriloquist dummy, and they're doing like crochet, and they're just like, God, I'm so bored with this. We're ready to go off on an adventure. So the humor was pretty good. The action was pretty good. The movie, for the most part, felt well paced enough, I would say. The special effects were fine. Overall, I think this movie, the pacing was better than the second movie. I don't know. The first movie I thought was probably the funniest one. The second one brought in a lot more references to the actual games and stuff in there. But the second movie also had a lot of filler. Like, there was like 30 minutes worth of fat you could have just trimmed out of that movie. I already talked about how they didn't really know what to do with Agent Stone, and like him and Wade were kind of just meandering around for several minutes of the movie. Then you had the infamous wedding scene, which goes on for like 20 minutes longer than it needed to, where it's like you don't even have any of the Sonic characters on screen right now. It's like all of a sudden this has become a movie about Maddie's sister. It's like, why? She's not even, I don't even know if she's a fan favorite character. I'm not a big fan of her personally. So that was kind of weird. Sonic 2 was just too bloated. This one felt pretty long. It felt, I don't know exactly what the runtime was, but it felt like it was probably close to the length of the second one, but it felt like it was a lot more worthwhile. I think some of the stuff where they were breaking into gun headquarters might have went on a little too long. I wasn't super crazy about some of that. But other than that, I thought the pacing was a lot better. You didn't have like all these big chunks of the movie where I was just really bored, other than, again, kind of the gun breaking in a little bit. So I thought it was good. I would say I would say the second movie is probably my least favorite, and that's probably a hot take. As far as which I like better between the first one and the third one, I don't know. Again, where I was there with family, it was a little bit more distracting. I wasn't fully just locked in. We also got there like a minute or two late, by the way, so we might have missed the opening bits of the movie that might have helped me understand Guns Roll a little bit more. So it was good, but I definitely feel like I need to maybe see it again at least one more time. The second Sonic movie, I felt like some of the jokes just didn't work as much, but that wasn't as big of a problem in this one. Like, some of it was just really random and weird, like when they go to that, I forget what country they go to, but it's like, there's snow everywhere. It's like, it's not Russia, but it's kind of Russia adjacent, I guess. It's like, I don't know. I don't remember. And they go into this like seedy bar basically, and Sonic has to do like the dance off with that guy, and you've got the granny, and she's knitting, and they're like, "Oh, it's just a sweet granny, what a relief." And then she holds up where she knitted like a skull and crossbones, and then someone chops a fish head off, and the fish head's like, "Run, get out of here," or whatever. Like, I just thought that whole part was like the humor didn't land for me. It was a little too over the top. Granny knitting the skull and crossbones, and then the fish head talking after it gets chopped. It's just like, I don't really find this that funny. But the humor I thought was better in the third movie, probably more in line with the first movie. I still would say that the first movie is my favorite in terms of comedy, but the third one might be the best overall in terms of blending the comedy with serious moments, and also having the good fan service. They play the like live and learn song, which is it Crush 40? I'm not the biggest Sonic guy, so I don't know exactly who sings that. I I feel like that could have been implemented a little bit better. I don't know why, but for me, it felt awkwardly edited in where they go Super Saiyan and it's playing, live and learn for a minute. Then it cuts to something else. Then it goes back to Sonic and, Super Sonic and Super Shadow and it's playing live and learn again for another 20 seconds or so. It just felt like that should have all been together in one scene and not broken up. I felt like that kind of took away from it. But yeah, on the whole, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I'd give it probably an 8.5 out of 10. Possibly 9. I'd have to kind of watch it again because I do think I missed stuff here and there. I don't think I was able to fully appreciate it as much as if I was just alone watching it. So I'll watch it again probably whenever it comes to streaming when they put it on Paramount Plus. Probably have a better impression of it the second time through, but it was good. Again, I definitely liked it better than the second one. And I've got high hopes with where they go for the fourth one. It's kind of crazy. It'll be coming out in 2027, I think. They've already said, and so there'll be 4 Sonic movies to all release in the 2020s. And, possibly if they make a Sonic 5, that could come out in 2029. So that's like 5 movies in a decade. Like they're just pumping these things out like crazy. It's ridiculous, but the quality hasn't dipped. If anything, it's arguably gone up. But they're still just churning these things out, biannually, so that's pretty cool. Plus, they got the series. Personally, like I said, I didn't like the Knuckles series. I thought it kind of sucked, if I'm being honest. And because of that, I was a little bit nervous going into the new Sonic movie. I was like, are none of the jokes going to land? Is it going to be real weird? And I'm going to hate all the characters like Wade's sister. But fortunately, you didn't have Wade's extended family in this movie. But yeah, I just I was not a big fan of that. But the movies have all been, they've knocked those out of the park. So I'm excited to see where they go from here. Hopefully, the rest of Hollywood will take note. It's just kind of a miracle that these movies turned out as good as they did. Because we were all all saw that trailer for the Ugly Sonic. When they had the original design, and then there was the big backlash, and they had to redesign it. So yeah, it's just kind of crazy that we're in this timeline that really it feels like shouldn't even exist. So I think we should all appreciate it, And I feel like the Sonic games too have also gotten a lot better. I thought Sonic and Shadow Generations I thought was really solid. Sonic Superstars I thought was pretty good. Sonic Frontiers I liked that game a lot. Still a little janky, but it was overall I had a really good time with it. And then you had Sonic Colors Ultimate, which, a lot of people thought that was kind of bad, especially at launch. There was a lot of bugs. I never had any bugs with it. It was my first time playing Sonic Colors. I always wanted to play it, and I enjoyed it. I thought the experience was fine. As somebody who never played the original, I didn't really see where it was compromised. I didn't run into any major... But it seems like the game, I might have got soft locked one time now that I think about it. But other than that, I didn't really run into any game-breaking bugs, really. So yeah, now they got a new Sonic racing game coming out in 2025. It's called like Sonic Racing Crossroads or something like that. So I'm assuming they're gonna, by the name Crossroads, it sounds like they're gonna bring in other Sega IP again. So maybe this will be a new favorite for people like Sonic and All Stars Racing Transformed was. So yeah, I think Sonic's just on the up and up. I think things are getting better for Sonic. I heard good things about Sonic Dream Team, which is like that Apple Arcade game that hardly anybody played. So hopefully they put that on consoles this year. That would be pretty sick. Maybe remake, or port over the Adventure games or something. Because I would like to play them. From what I've seen of Adventure 2, it doesn't really look all that good to me, to be honest. It seems kind of like a janky, broken mess, but with a lot of weird gimmicky stuff like your Tails and he's in a little contraption and you're shooting, and that just doesn't seem fun. That's not Sonic gameplay. But I would try it if they put it on Switch or Switch 2 or whatever. But yeah, I feel like things are looking up for Sonic and hopefully for Hollywood as well, because I'm hoping the success of the Sonic movie and kind of how poorly Mufasa's done in comparison is going to send home a message to to the Hollywood executives of what people actually want, and quit being so tone deaf and everything. The Mario movie 2 was really successful. It's great. We're getting good video game adaptations, getting good family movies, and not just crappy bare minimum. So hopefully that'll they'll keep that trend going. But yeah, final thing to say about the Sonic movie. My 6-year-old nephew, he said that he really loved it. He said it was his favorite of the 3 Sonic movies. And then my dad, he said like 3 or 4 times talked about how great that the movie was. He's like, that movie was great. He kept saying it after we left the theater. And my dad doesn't even like the Sonic games. I've shown a few of them to him, and he's kind of like, not really for me. This seems kind of boring. Like the game's just kind of playing itself, which to an extent sometimes I can agree with my dad on that. But yeah, he's never really been much of a Sonic fan, but he thought Jim Carrey killed it. He thought it was hilarious. He loved it. So I think that speaks volumes about the movie, that kids and adults alike, whether or not they have any connection to the Sonic franchise, can really enjoy it. So in some ways, this is the quintessential Sonic movie. It appeals to somebody like me who's more of a gamer, but still has gaps in my Sonic knowledge. Appeals to the very hardcore Sonic fanatics. Appeals to my little 6-year-old nephew, so the more casual audience, and then my dad, who's in his 50s, who never really connected with the game. So it's just a good movie all the way around. So yeah, looking forward to Sonic 4. I'll catch you guys on the next video where I talk about who knows what I talk about. See you guys then. Bye bye.